I never make that claim.
Right, I think we might be golden.
SW, which I'm going to guess is Steve.
Is that sharing the right screen now?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. Right, let's crack on then. So, so we had a good session a couple of weeks ago to have a general chat about Humanity Ascendant, about getting up and running again, just general sort of Q&A as well about the game. So what we're going to do is start concentrating on some of the other aspects of the game, breaking down the aspects of the game. So we're going to go through the classes one by one, but we're also going to go through the old ops, both from an in-character and out-character point of view. Just talk about how we sort of set up the operations or the events, should I say, what we wanted to achieve in the events, how they went, the good stuff, the bad stuff, or not so good stuff, and then just talk about one of the classes. So today we're going to be talking about Op 1 and the soldier class, and obviously linked into soldiers, we'll have a chat about how the combat system works. So I'm going to talk about, myself and Chris are going to talk about the Operation 1. We've also got Mike on, who was a ref in at the first event, so he'll be available to answer questions as well. And then Dave and Jen, if Jen gets on, are going to talk about Jen's not coming on. Okay, so just be Dave talking about the combat system. Any point, if you want to ask questions, just ask away. We'll get into it as soon as we can, but then there'll be a Q&A towards the end. All right, so let's crack on. So first session, stupid think it's skipping. So first operation was known as Prison Break, and took place in November 2017, a long time ago now. Took place at Woolly Edge Scout Campsite in South Yorkshire. Quite a reasonable site, a very long, sort of thin site, gradient one side to the other, which it were quite good for sort of having long linear combats, but not so good for having sort of wide open space and flanking and things like that. But a good site generally. So what were we trying to achieve in this first event? We were trying to introduce players to our world. We're trying to showcase and test our rules and systems, which is like the laser tag system, the radios, the combat and healing, the QR code system for the salvage and repping, and the self sort of reffing on that kind of thing. This thing keeps going wappy. And the skills system. And then the other main thing was that the players were going to set up the first sort of hub location, which came to be known as Outpost 13, or Fort Leon, as it was later named by the players, and then start building up player agency, i.e. this is their game and story, hence what I've just said there, Outpost 13 being renamed Fort Leon by the players. So we set out with some clear goals, but with some scope for them to complete them, because we wanted to start to bring the players into them sort of running their own destiny, but we realised we had to do that slowly. So a lot of our players are used to sort of like linear.
Lee, your audio's gone to shit.
Has it? Okay. Any better?
It's all right on mine.
Yeah, all right for me.
It might just be your connection, Mike. How's it now?
Must be just me then, sorry.
Okay.
Miles better.
Right, cool. So we had clear goals set out, but there were a lot of scope on how the players completed them. And then if they came up with ways to complete stuff where we hadn't thought about it, we would take a view on it. We didn't punish players for sort of going off-piste. We wanted to have something for all the classes to do. And we wanted to establish ownership, as we said, ownership agency. Basically retake this outpost and then make it theirs. So you got a copy of the player brief there, which is basically the story was that the prison within the Bunker Ascendant has had a prison break, and almost all the prisoners escaped onto the surface. The FEF sort of operation mandate was due to be activated within the next few months or the next year or so. The councillors have been arguing over it for many years about whether it was the right time to go onto the surface. And this sort of tipped it over the edge. As you go, this prisoners escaping, they have to do something about it. So they launched the FEF operation to retake the surface early, basically, and the prison break is the reason for them to do that. So their mission parameters were to go pursue, detain, and return all the escapees to the bunker. gather evidence about the prison warden that had been murdered. And then while they were there, generally explore, observe, and gather information about the surface, plants, vegetation, animals, what's going on up there, the radiation. They know the radiation is starting to subside, but what's actually going on the surface. And then if they were able to locate any bunker facilities, which obviously they did, they found out both 13, they were to repair and enhance them and make use of them to establish some kind of hold on the surface. So that was the overview of what they were out to do. So the main hooks for the event. So we started the players at the edge of the campsite, and basically their remit was to just go and find these escapees. They had no idea the outposts were there. As far as aware, they're just after the escapees. Obviously, once they got to the outpost, started to investigate that and found the way inside, and it led from there. There were 2 factions to deal with on the surface. I'm really sorry about this thing with the slideshow, but sort it out for the next one. So 2 main factions in the prisoners. One was highly hostile. They were known as the Bratvers, sort of like Russian mafia type arrangement within the prison population, and that were most of the prisoners. But then you also had a sort of a side faction, like the Grubs. They were a bit more reasonable, quite technically savvy, and they were looking to basically survive at all costs. And they realised that it's probably might be worth actually working with the FAF rather than against them, and see if they can manage to steal themselves a living on the surface. We also introduced a hive, which was a zombie-like nanite threat, which the players have had dealings with over most of the events now. And that was sort of zombies with a twist, we can say. So the highlights of the first event. The main one for me, I think, one of the big ones, was watching the players begin to understand how firearms combat works and develop combat tactics. So when they started off, they were all walking down the path together, as what many people do in sort of linear events, fantasy laps, things like that. And when they started getting shot at, they just got tore to bits because the beams were just hitting into the group and they were just shredding everybody. Within a matter of sort of, I would say, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, the players were starting to spread out, they were starting to flank, they were starting to talk to each other, make manoeuvres, make better use of cover, and that continued for like the next 3 or 4 events. That sort of strategies, led by the soldiers, but everybody getting involved in it, and becoming better and better at the sort of the combat side of things, as the players' skills, like in character and out of character, developed as well. The low GM intervention encounter, so the QR code system, it worked really well. We started off relatively simple with that. There wasn't loads of interactivity in terms of options that you can click, because when you scan a QR code, we can have it just give you information and tell you to do things, or we can have like multiple choice questions and things like that. And early doors, we didn't do a lot of that, but it didn't matter, because what it meant was players were like finding bits of salvage. They were solving puzzles and things like without GMs anywhere nearby, while under fire, multiple ones at the same time, all that sort of thing, which is something that, you know, you'll come across in other systems, you really struggle to do things like that. And it just really helps with the immersion level of things. And then they were letting the players make major decisions and deal with the consequences. The players were absolutely trigger happy at this event. Obviously, first time getting all the weapons and things like that, they basically killed everything. I would say probably 90% of what they encountered, probably more than 90%, they mowed down. And there were consequences for this. We didn't penalise the players for killing the prisoners or shooting at natives or things like that. We just tied it into the story. And the players had to resolve that in later events. And the genuine fear when they first encountered the hive. There's some very interesting occurrences there when they first came across the hive and they dropped them. And then as they got close to them, they started getting back up. When they were actually scanning the bodies, they were getting back up. And that caused some real confusion until they realised how to deal with them. And that was a lot of fun to see. Not so much for the players in some parts. So yeah, one of the things they did do is they had an encounter with the Stricken on the surface. It was very little contact with Stricken first event, but the ones that they did find, they shot at. So yeah, not establishing the best relations with the stricken for further events, and that's something they ended up having to sort out later on. And then the not so greats, tag equipment were temperamental early doors. Programming before missions took a long time because we were doing it all manually. We've massively improved on that now. You literally, it's one button click now to switch between players and NPC roles for your guns. Whereas before it were taking like sort of 5 minutes per player. And when you got 20 players queuing up, that took a long time. All that's gone away now, which is really good. Lots of work required to enhance NPC kit. You got a picture there, so early doors. We had a couple of people that came down for the day just to help out with the NPC, and so obviously their kit's not the best, but you can see very low standard to start with. But that's developed, but that's always a work in progress, and we're getting better and better. And not taking enough picks, which is just we're very bad at taking picks, but again we're trying to get better. So, Chris, do you want to go through this list, mate, and just give people an idea of what we got up to?
Yeah, no worries.
Players got up to.
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, with both going after the prisoners and trying to introduce the players to the new things on the surface, there were plenty of things that they came up across. So they.
There you go.
There we go. So yeah, they found and investigated Outpost 13. As mentioned from the start, they didn't know it was out there, so it was a surprise to them and a great boom to them at the time because they were all about to die of radiation poisoning if they didn't get in there. As also mentioned, everyone was very trigger happy. Everyone was very trigger happy. There were no prisoners taken. There were no prisoners recovered. I think you can count on one hand that's had a significant industrial injury, the number of prisoners that were actually recovered by the players at that point. They just murdered everything, which is grand. But, we always try and say in the game that there's no right or wrong answer. There's just action and consequence. So we rolled with everything that came out of that. Basically, due to most of them being the Bratva, it was deemed that they were too difficult to recover, so they were just murdered like en masse, basically. Made some dubious alliances with the surviving prisoners. As mentioned, there were a couple of different factions of prisoners. The standard brutes, and then the smart grubs, who were happy to strike up a working bargain with the players, and that plot thread was pursued by the players there at the time. There was an encounter where we were trying to introduce the natives, to which the players had been essentially invading their territory. They come up in the middle of this established land, and naturally the tribesmen take an interest in that. And in accordance with everything that the players were doing at the fest, they shot the hell out of these scouts. And murdered them, despite the fact that they were actually trying to help, which I found really funny. But obviously, again, there's no right or wrong answers. There's just actions and consequences. So they had to take actions later in the fest to smooth that over with the overall tribe chieftain, and that once they'd done that then established plot going forward into future events. We introduced one of the main bad guys for the time being from the first event, which was the Hive, sort of sci-fi pseudo undead. And I have to say, one of the best moments from my unfortunately many LARPing years now was having a few of these Hive creatures run down the hill towards the players, and when they didn't just instantly die to being shot, the players just turning tail and running one at a time and piecemeal. It's just one of those images that sticks with you, and I found it incredibly entertaining. But the players very quickly learned how to deal with the Hive and the threat that they posed, and it was genuinely impressive to see how they went from, affectionately, from a shit show in the first encounter to in later fests and later encounters being able to proficiently slaughter the hive that they came across. It was genuinely impressive how the players were able to turn around and adapt to the situation. Learned about the various threats on the surface as well, like natural radiation. At the end of the day, it's the wasteland after a nuclear war. We've got the things of varying types of radiation on the surface, not just like clouds of radiation going, but we also tried to put thought into how it would affect the flora and fauna. We crafted things so that they encountered mutated trees, not just with QR coded up, which was fantastic to see how it was working, but like, you know, creating phys reps that we could apply to the trees and to interesting points to convert them, to make them look like they were something from the post-apocalypse. And generally that worked well. Yeah, obviously notes were taken for improving things going into the future, but overall the idea behind them I think worked really well. And another interesting part to it that the players slowly started to get onto was the fact that they realised they weren't being told everything by the authorities. They realised they were being perhaps used, and that there was more subtle and clandestine plot happening within the bunker itself. Not everything that they were there to engage with was as a result of actions on the surface. There were shenanigans and things afoot in the bunker itself, which the players only got the tip of the iceberg, but managed to sink the teeth into fiercely and drag it to a conclusion in a later event. Yeah, and it was tons of fun, lots of learning, lots of things to learn by both players and refs. But overall, it was great fun, and it was fantastic to see all these plans that ourselves and Longy had talked about and put into place. It was fantastic to see things actually working out in the field.
Mm-hmm. Mike, have you got all you want to add to that, matey?
Yeah, I can do. I'm just eating my teeth. I'll only miss a second. So, can everyone hear me, first of all?
Yep, we can hear you, mate.
So, first of all, I think the most important thing to point out is that nobody was doing, still nobody is, realistically speaking, doing a LARP with lasers, not properly, not on full events, and they definitely weren't at the time. So it was about writing a rule set from the ground up, and it was quite primitive, but we got there, and things did get done, and it was playable at that point, and obviously things moved along. And it, like I said, the word primitive isn't meant as a derogatory term. It was made to move forward and get people interested and get people by it. And the gleeful look on Lee's face will be forever etched in my memory when things actually started to work after a difficult start of, yeah, it worked in his back garden, but it didn't necessarily work with 30 people in a field.
Mm.
There was a lot to do, a lot to write. The combat is effective and visceral and very different, because a lot of the people who were playing it played F&H. So as Lee pointed out, tactically walking down, it's not like playing with airsoft players. So tactically walking down the path and getting turned to jam was a regular occurrence on the first couple of days. But it was fabulously supported as well. As usual, Steve Wainwright, every event cooking. I'm sure he's still doing exactly the same thing. But we also had a couple of guest stars as well. We had Rachel doing the tattoo stuff to make them Bradford guys stand out and give them a good look and feel. But also, a lot of the players decided to get their own stuff and make it really sort of work. So from day one, it's been a real collaboration between the refs and the players. And I've not played for a little while, but I'm sure it's still the case. But it's done good. it's come good for everybody involved, I believe.
Thanks, Mikey. Any players that were on the first event want to add out on there before we move on to the soldier stuff? Were you at the first event, Alex? I can't remember.
Yeah, been at every event, me.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's why I'm so good. And modest. Yeah, I think Mehmet said in the little chat thing there about how the Friday night was in the dark, and I think because it was November, like one of the lessons that we learned wrong from the event was, oh, there's a lot of night fighting at this, but that was because we started at a Friday, like mid-November, and it was pretty much straight away dark, pitch black. And the next event, people turned up with the intention of, oh, this will work in the night and this kind of thing. And I think it was like a spring event, and it was like glorious sunshine for most of the event, and it was totally different. And it very much is quite seasonal. But yeah, Jane's just saying there about the genuine fear in the dark. I think I got shot by my own team, although friendly fire was off. They kept shooting at me over and over again in that night. And every engineer on the party shot me at least 7 times. And I was like, stop shooting me. You know, you're giving me a position away for one. But yeah, no, it was great fun. And I think low monster count as well. And it was very much like an aliens bug hunt that first night, where you're sort of sweeping across, and there's probably only 1 or 2 monsters out there, but you know, they tied up whatever the player base was at the time, and I think it was good. But as you say, some of the downsides was the time on the guns. I think the makeup we had for the Bratva was really, really good, but again, it was a queue to go and get makeup, a queue to get your gun things, and so there's a lot of processing time, which certainly hasn't been the case in the more recent events. You're up and gone, and I think it's better for it. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Didn't die. That's the main thing.
Okay, sound. We'll move on to the soldier stuff then. So Dave's going to cover this for the most part, I believe. So if you want to crack on, Dave.
Yeah, you would normally have Jen talking about this as well, but she's not been feeling too well recently, so that's why she's not in attendance. She sends her apologies. So we thought as Lee said, we're going to cover the classes in a bit more detail than we did in the first call, and relate another part of the game system to whatever's relevant to that class. So obviously the first one, because it's what everyone really is interested in to start with before they come to their first event, and some people continue to be that, is the guns and shooting people. So basic dudes, general spods, have 1 hit and 10 health. So the hits are used for melee. So if someone stabs you with a knife, unsurprisingly, you fall over and start to die. Whereas the health, that's representing that's for the laser tag and the gun combat system. Now, health is a little bit of a misnomer. The reason being that it doesn't just represent health, it is also a representation of morale, or courage under fire, and there's a number of skills in the game that play on that part of it. So although it's called health because that's what it is called in the guns, that it's not just it's not a representation of purely physical damage. There are a number of things it kind of rolls into one. So most armor types add both global hits and health. So if you're wearing light armor, for example, you gain an additional melee hit and 5 additional health points. Again, representing the fact that 1, you're tougher to damage because you've got body armor on, and 2, that you're feeling a bit more happy about life because although things are trying to kill you, your important bits are protected. So the more armor you have, the more hit points you have. The crucial thing about HASC, unlike a lot of kind of contemporary fantasy LARPs, if you like, is that it doesn't really matter how much of you is armored and where is armored to a certain extent. As long as your armor looks cool, it looks like it's an appropriate physical representation of someone wearing light armor or someone in slightly more heavier reinforced armor. It doesn't make any difference. If someone stabs you in your armpit that isn't technically armored, doesn't make any difference. You still count your armor as being there. And obviously the guns don't care because they're only shooting you in the head or the gun itself. So it doesn't really make any difference where you're armored from a game standpoint. Next slide, please.
Am I that doctor now?
Yes, you are that guy. So, as we just kind of said, health is used to represent your morale or physical wounds, if you like, from the firearms combat system. Guns start at damage 2, which is what most partially trained. If you have been shown the trigger, the clip, the reload, and which way to point at an enemy, then you will be doing 2 damage with any weapon that you are able to get your hand on, which is, for most people, pistols, SMGs, assault rifles. Those are the kind of the standard weapons that any member of the FEF, regardless of class, can learn how to use. But they can go all the way up to 50. I think the highest damage weapon we've had so far in player hands is 20, which I think is like a modified sniper rifle. So even like, but that's someone who spent some time learning about that and has an in-game modified weapon to be able to do that kind of damage. So as you can see there, trained people, which is the skill anyone can get, it's in the basic skill section, lets you do 2 damage per shot. Proficient users, that ups your damage by a step with that weapon. So you go from 2 damage to 4 damage. And the same applies to pistols. So if you have a pistol instead of a rifle, you do 2 damage if you're just trained. But if you've had military training, which makes you proficient, that then ups the damage to 4. So yeah, if you're just a dude, it will take you 5 shots to kill me, like walking down the street. And again, that represents the fact that, you know, the first one might just wing me and then I might get into cover and I'm starting, you know, the other bullets might not physically hit me, but actually they're having an impact on my morale. So next slide, please.
Just a bit, missed a bit at the bottom there, Mark, about the difference between doing 2 and 4 damage, the fact that trained, you're taking somebody down in 5 hits, but with proficient, it's 3. So it's like much more efficient, basically. Yeah. Okay. So
let's talk about why you might want to consider playing a soldier. So it is easy to play to start with. You turn up in your kit, someone will tell you roughly where to stand and probably where to go, and your job is to shoot the bad guys and protect the other people that you're there stood around with. But that isn't to say that that's your limitation. You are not just literally, you know, turn up, stand there. If you want to get more involved, for example, the soldiers have spent time getting to know the natives and doing some training with them to provide a security force on the surface for one of our settlements. But also they spend time creating and securing supply depots along the route between Bunker Ascendant and the HAL Institute, therefore increasing their morale, if you like, over that time. So soldiers can get involved in pretty much everything. We've had King Hook as our lab assistant, ably providing expert commentary and taking pictures, whilst myself and Ivan, which is Mehmet's character, we're tinkering around with stuff in the lab. You know, soldiers can get involved in anything, you know, from that point of view. You will almost always need at least 1 soldier on a mission. Some missions don't need a bureaucrat, or an engineer probably isn't going to be useful. But for probably 90% of the missions, unless it's specifically written to do something different, you're going to need at least 1 soldier. You're probably going to want to take 2 or 3, to be honest, if not more. And soldiers, with a couple of exceptions, soldiers get the most range of access to weaponry. So you can become trained to use sniper rifles, LMGs, grenade launchers, which at the moment, grenade launchers don't work like grenade launchers do. So again, so it's just a limitation of the technology. A grenade launcher essentially fires 1 really high damage single shot, and it's mean. And lastly, the one which we have yet to see a soldier take proficiency in yet, which is assault shields. Assault shields are essentially riot shields. Then they're one of the few classes in the game that can actively cover their headband from being shot. Normally, that's the only restriction you have in combat, is you cannot, unless you can get into cover, but you can't put your hand in front of the sensors and just walk around and not get shot. Whereas soldiers trained in assault shields can cover their headbands with their shields whilst whilst performing their usual duties of potentially shooting at people at the same time.
And the shields have windows in them, so you can actually fully cover yourself and still fire at people reasonably accurately. Bear in mind, shooting around the side of the shield.
And you can't shoot through that, right?
No, because your headband's above the window. Your eyes are looking through the window, and your headband's above it.
Yeah. So, yeah. In short, if you want to come along to events and the main thing you want to do is shoot the hell out of people with a variety of lethal weaponry, soldiers is definitely the class for you. Next slide, please. Okay, what not to do as a soldier. Right, okay, so here's some tips on how to, at your first event, the things you should be avoiding doing. 1, someone on every mission will be carrying a box labeled medic. This is how you get everyone back up. So when you're, as we talked about in the first one, when you've taken your health in damage, your headband will make a dying noise, and you'll hear beeps, and then your gun will stop working. You will not be able to fire whilst you are critically wounded. The only way to get you up and firing again is by use of healing nanites, and they are projected from the healing box that normally is carried not by a soldier, generally speaking by either a medic or a bureaucrat or potentially even an engineer or a scientist. Normally they are not carried by soldiers because they tend to get taken to the soldiers. So always know where your nanite box is and don't let them get shot before you. The same rules apply to engineers and ammo boxes. So ammo boxes look identical. They're just labeled ammo instead of health. And this is the way you replenish your ammunition. So everyone has a limited amount of bullets in their weapon of choice. And the last thing you want to do is you want to be halfway through a firefight and you just hear the dead man's click, and then also the same dead man's click when you try and push the reload button. It's terrifying. Happened to me on a number of occasions. It's horrible. Luckily, I play an engineer and quite often have to wait to replenish my own ammo. But as a soldier, never be afraid to ask engineers for a top up after a fight or before you're about to go into a big fight. It's much easier to do it outside of combat than it is inside of combat.
So generally, guns will have 5 clips as a part of the gun. Sort of like you'll have 5 reloads. Like a rifle has 30 shots, but it's like 3-inch bursts of 3 if you hold the trigger down. So you got like 10 bursts times 5 clips, 50 bursts, and then you're looking for ammo. Now, if you're conservative, they can last quite a long time, but you definitely need those ammo replenishers on a long mission. Absolutely.
And then lastly, and this has happened on a couple of times, and this is probably where people have come the closest to actually dying, is it all sounds well and good, like, right, cool, there's a hill here, so I'm going to go up on top of that hill, and I'm then going to get into a defilade position, and I'm going to shoot down at the bad guys. Cool. If they've had the same idea, they don't care if they die very much. They are definitely going to try and kill you. And if you get stranded up there with nowhere to tell anyone that you're bleeding out, you are just going to die. Or, worse than that, your squad are going to have to hightail it up a hill into enemy fire to get you on your feet again. So it is, again, a lot of the soldiers in-game currently who've been to a few events do a very good intro on the first night. So someone like Hook or Hawk or Hammer, they'll all be able to give you tips on what to do and where to stand. Like, they're not going to just be like, look at that guy, he's over there dying. The soldiers don't do that. Engineers might do that to each other, but soldiers don't do that.
Okay.
Next slide. So, a bit more on the actual skills of building a character. It's very true. Although 2 of them, it's their actual names rather than their nicknames, Steve. Just those are the 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. And I didn't
you forgot Tower, who's on the line.
I was racking my brain. And do you know what the problem with Tower's name is? I didn't give it to him, so I don't remember it. So that's not the. Sorry, Ron. I was trying to think of your character's name, and it just completely went out of my mind. So, starting character skills. These are all the skills that you are generally going to want to take as a soldier. So, firearms proficiency. You'll see that in the player's guide. That's basically a 2-skill breakdown. So it's 5 points to become trained with a weapon, and then 10 points for proficiency as a soldier. But when you take the 10-point skill, you get the 5 points back. So it is just net 10 points for soldiers to take that skill. Light armor, which just gives you an extra 5 hit points. Heavy armor, which you need like the light armor skill for, which gives you another 5 on top of that, so it's 10 points. DMR is the designated marksman rifle, which is like a hybrid between a sniper rifle and an assault rifle. It is silenced, so it doesn't go off like the assault rifles do. It is a slower rate of fire, but it's better with the scope. It has a slightly longer range,
slightly more damage as well.
Yeah, it has a higher damage floor, so it starts at 5 damage per shot with the DMR. Then marksman, essentially this skill just ups the damage of the weapon, of any weapon you use, by 1. So for example, it takes, if you have an assault rifle, then you go proficiency and marksman, that takes it from 4 to 5. With a DMR, if you take marksman, it goes from 5 to 7. So
the damage steps, if that seems quite confusing, the damage steps, so there's a bit of logarithmic scale to them until you get up to 10. So it's 2 and 4 is your 2 base steps, depending whether you're trained or proficient. But then it goes 5, 7, 10. And then after that, it's in like 5-point steps. So starting at 5, although it's only 1 point more than 4, it's a big thing in itself for the DMR, because it's your next step is straight to 7. So like Dave says, you're starting at that higher floor, which gets you up to the higher damage a lot quicker.
Yeah, and as Alex says there, like, so if you're proficient with an assault rifle, that's 4 damage per shot, which is 3 shots to put down a normal human, because they have 10 health. So you do 4, then 4. They only have 2 left, but you do 4, so it's 3 shots. But if you go from 4 to 5, that's only 2 shots required to put someone down. So it is a big jump. And there aren't many people outside of soldiers that take this skill, because it's expensive. And if you take skills outside of your profession, then they become more expensive. So this is one of the real kind of cornerstone skills of being a soldier. And then the last one is salvage. This allows you, so in the game, they've mentioned the QR code system in the debrief around event 1, but there's things you find that have a value, and this values are kind of, some of it has a specific reason that you would use it, but a lot of the things you find just have this arbitrary value of salvage, and salvage is used for projects, upgrades, either permanent or temporary, or to negotiate and barter with people you might find in the wasteland. So it has a number of uses. If you don't have the skill, you can't identify something as having value, and you certainly won't be able to work out what it does. Essentially, it gives you what happens in the game is you get given the password for scanning the QR codes that would have military salvage on there. It's like an IC. It's an upgrade to your pad, in essence.
Okay.
Those are those. So here's a couple of ideas for different character builds for those people playing soldiers. So this is the affectionately renamed tank build. So this basically just focuses around becoming proficient with firearms and then taking the 2 armor skills. So it essentially doubles the amount of health your character has. And the only type of soldier that doesn't shoot a gun is a soldier that's bleeding out. So although your damage per shot will be less, you will have substantial more shots because you'll have more health.
Yeah.
So, yep. Next one. Damage build. So this is just literally, I don't really care about me getting shot. I'm going to hide and I'm going to be good at it. So I'm just going to take all out DPS damage. So you take firearms proficiency and marksman, that's your total 20 points. And like it says there, it ups you to 5 damage per hit with a rifle, and changes SMGs up to 4 damage and pistols up to 4 damage. So with an assault rifle shooting, you become very dangerous for that. But you obviously don't have the benefits of having increased health. Next one. Scout build. So this is a bit more around what you would imagine kind of like Marines in America, like Force Recon. So you become proficient in firearms, you take the DMR skill and salvage. So this gives you a higher damage gun. So with that, you're doing 5 damage per shot with your DMR, but also gives you the opportunity to salvage things out in the field. So if you're thinking that you might want to join the recon part of soldier specialization, and you want to be kind of like that long to mid-range firefight specialist, then this is probably the skills that you would want to take. So yeah, as it says in here, it's the DMR's good at medium to long range. I think they all have scopes fitted of varying types, and yeah, it's pretty good.
You can have the scope or the red dot, but I think most of them tend to go for the scope. But to be fair, if you picked up the you can get a dual combo of scope and red dot. If you wanted to pick one of them up yourselves, you're welcome to fit those.
Yeah, I was going to go on to that bit at the end, the kit stuff. So next one. So this is a kind of the opposite of the stuff of what not to do. So I'm not going to read them all in detail, but you need to be able to stay in touch with your squad, act like you're in an action movie, but you're not the hero. So you're the red shirt. So if you walk down the path, bullets are not going to mysteriously go past you. They are going to absolutely shoot you in the face. So make sure you're looking for cover, communicate with the rest of your team, advance in the kind of the 2x2 fire formation that you see a lot of stuff used in, American SWAT TV shows. All of that stuff works really well at HASC. If you get hit, scream like a girl. Not that girls scream bunches out of the men, but they are definitely known for it. It is vital that people know you are going down. The only time where you might want to not do that is if you have access to a radio. So if you have a radio and your squad has another radio, you can then whisper quietly into it that you've been taken down. But otherwise, you definitely want people to know that you're taken down. And your 30 seconds that you have from the point at which you are dealt a lethal firearms blow, you can crawl that around. You can crawl, you can kind of pull yourself up to a tree or drag yourself along a fence, or, you can get into a position. If you can't get back to the position where your med box is, then at least get yourself into a position where it's much safer for them to get to you.
Okay. It's a moment for one of those Buffy the Vampire Slayer death scenes.
Yeah. So as Mike kind of alluded to, I think a few people have talked about it now, don't walk in a straight line. These guns, the way they work is they shoot a beam of IR. If it isn't blocked, it's not just going to go, oh, I hit one person, I'm going to stop. It's not how it works. One round from a gun can hit multiple targets. So if there's a nice little row of people and you shoot it, chances are you're going to clip them all. So it is again, you kind of want to be spread out and kind of line rather than column formation is definitely the order of the day.
So it's got to be basically the IR has a bit of a cone effect to it. So the further out you are from the shot, obviously the power of the IR starts to fall, but the cone actually starts getting wide as well. So like at 100 meters, it could be like a sort of a 2 foot wide, 2 foot diameter cone. So if you can imagine, if you're densely packed, that cone can go through 2 or 3 people if you're not careful. So you do have to be quite a good shot to hit at 100 meters, but you don't have to be like absolutely ridiculous sniper level of ability. You just have to place it within half a meter of the headband, which is really good for like giving you that bit more of a hero sort of complex that you can make these difficult shots. But it works the other way as well, that if there's 2 or 3 of you with your heads together on a ridge line, 2 of you might get hit. So it's all about putting a bit of space into it, and it's all about the combat tactics. And it's why we talk about shots, not necessarily hitting you to take your health down, the sort of driving your morale down as well. And it's sort of like you might have 3 or 4 near misses, and then it's that last shot that hits you and knocks you down, sort of from an in-character role play perspective, if that makes sense. So it's all about that tactics and having that spacing.
Yeah, and again, the last bit is just like for most people, I think. Alex has dropped out. Pretty much everyone on this call has done some form of LARP. You know, just because you're stood talking to Dave the Merchant does not mean that Steve the Bandit is not up there getting ready to shoot at you. So just because a lot of the encounters you don't, like we talked about with the QR code system, a lot of the encounters don't require refs to sit on top of them. Actually, you can run a lot of things at the same time at HASC with a very limited monster crew. So we've seen it a number of times where there's like 2 people out in the woods tracking someone. You've got a bunch, like 3 people in an encounter having in a firefight, and then there's someone else setting something up, or there's other stuff going on all at the same time. So there's lots of crazy stuff goes on in the woods, and it can get quite hairy, especially at dusk. That's when it gets pretty terrifying.
Yeah, you got to sort of break that assumption that once you've sort of broke the combat in an encounter and you're sort of looting up and that, like you would do in a fantasy LARP, sort of starting to do your looting or you're talking to the survivors or whatever, you can't make that assumption that it's over. You can't make that assumption that, well, it's okay because, we've got a sword and shield and they've got to run 50 meters from the nearest cover to get to me. There's none of that. You could start getting pinged instantly, and it does happen. And you will have monsters that will take it to NPCs that will take it to the extreme, that will have the briefing to track you across multiple encounters and engage when it's most beneficial to them and least beneficial to yourself. So all that is you need to bear in mind. We do try and make it as close to sort of a military simulation as we can, sort of thing. So when you're out in the field, it's a dangerous place to be, basically, generally.
Yeah, nowhere is safe. The only just while we're talking, because I think we're just about done, aren't we? So the only thing that I will say is firearms combat doesn't take place inside a building at HASC. The reason being is that the guns are designed for outdoor shooting. So you can, and this is what happened, one of the first events that we learned, apparently at the first event, I wasn't there, but Chris burst into the hut, just fired in one direction and killed everyone in the entire room because it just bounces off all the walls.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I wasn't there, mate. You don't need to apologise to me. I'm cool with it. So gun combat doesn't take place inside like the Outpost or the Hal Institute or the Dahl Institute or anything like that. But that isn't to say those places aren't dangerous. We had a person who'd been mind controlled or wounded and set up, and they had a bomb strapped to them, and they managed to make their way inside the bunker. Now, if that had gone off in there, that would have been really bad. We managed to get the person outside and successfully disarm the bomb, but everything out there is trying to kill you in some way.
Oh, not everything. There's some nice guys. Yeah, okay. So I think I just have one last point that we've purposefully not talked about what happens when you reach 0 health. We've mentioned about 30-second crawling about and things, but we're going to talk about medics in detail, how the healing actually works, when you have to use patches, when you have to use a special nano box. We'll cover that all in the medic stuff because it makes a lot more sense to put it there. So at that point, we're going to open up the floor if anybody's got any questions or anything like that. It doesn't have to be just about what we've talked about here. It can be about anything if anybody wants to ask anything.
Stop your screen share now, dude, as well.
Okay.
Can I bagsy a shield?
Assault shield, of course you can.
Nice.
Take you a few events to get there, Mikey, but yes, I would love to.
Yeah, but my kit is effectively a commissar's kit.
Right. Nice. Lead from the front.
Lead from the front, just get a sword. Be all right, machine pistol, it'll do it.
Fair dues.
Well, assault class, one of the specialist skills they have is the ability to fire an SMG whilst holding an assault shield.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Any more for any more? Lewis, you've been very quiet. Are we getting you along, matey? You're on mute. You're on mute, mate.
I'm looking forward to it. It's sounding really good. I think I'm following along. Okay, getting the most of it.
Cool.
It all goes out the window within the first 30 seconds anyway, because then you start getting shot at and you're just running around like a headless chicken.
I do have a quick question. So I was looking at the recon. Tactical radios. So it says restricted and stuff like that. So can I get a quick bit of information on the tactical radio stuff? Because signals and stuff like that is massive to me when I was in the cadets and stuff. That's a good area of interest for me. So am I able to get a little bit of information on that, if that's okay?
Yeah. So when we first set out, we restricted the radio usage in character, in that we made it so you had one radio on mission, which was used to communicate with the bunker. So in game, what we have is basically there's drones. Every party whenever any party goes out, there's drones that goes out with it. Obviously, we're not flying actual drones for the most part. We do fly drones, but for the most part, we don't. It's just an in-character thing. So
Sure.
you basically have 3 stealth drones around you. So one's ahead, one's circling the group at all times at like sort of 100, 200 meter radius, and there's one in backup. And what that allows us to do is the GMs will feed information to you as the bunker drone operators, like a proper military thing. That you got the scout drone, and they will feed you information on incoming. They will give you information on, because they've got thermal imaging, all that sort of stuff. So generally, you will have a lot of information on the battlefield of what's going on, where your attacks are going to come from, all that kind of stuff. When you're fighting Bunker Fortitude, they've got ways of beating the thermal imaging and things like that. So that can be little bit more tricky.
Sure.
But generally, you will feel like you are in possession of more information than the enemy, and that enables you to engage, hopefully, on your own terms a lot. It's not foolproof, obviously, because it's it's keep it interesting, but it's generally quite good. And when what we did initially is the squad leader had a radio, and then the recon characters, when they specialised, could take a radio. We've now got rid of that restriction, and now any soldier can take a radio. What I will say is we do have a limited amount. We have 8 radios. We reserve 4 for the GMs, so there's 4 available on a first come first served basis. But if you want to buy your own, they are ridiculously cheap.
Sure. I have some with me. So it's just in case I was allowed to use those, bring those along.
Yeah. So it's just your standard 8-channel radio system. If it works on the 8 channels, it'll work with ours. So no problem at all with that.
Awesome.
So yeah, and like I say, we use it for some out of character stuff, but it is mostly in character, and it does add a lot to the immersion, to be fair, and a lot of obviously tactical benefit for the soldiers as well.
Especially when the networks get hacked or you hack the enemy.
Yeah.
That works both ways, as we've discovered, and makes for messy firefights on either side if your communications get compromised, or you somehow manage to get hold of a Bunker Fortitude radio and are just sat there listening to what they're saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is good. It is like for me, the radio bit is one of the best things about HASC. It does a number of different things. And at the last event and the event before, we had a character who was permanently stationed in the outpost location and it was a bureaucrat character, and she had access into the bunker through her skills. So we were radioing her back off missions going, shit, we've encountered this, what the hell is it? And then she was able to then communicate with the bunker and then feed that information back out to the mission. So awesome. It was so great. So yeah, radios are really good. But yeah, there's no restriction on, but you, like I said, if your character can buy one and you've got one, yeah, you can use them.
Awesome. Cool.
So other thing that we're going to be adding for the next event is a Gorman station, as I'm calling it. So we will have a GoPro available to be mounted on a soldier's headset or whatever to go out on mission, which will be live streaming back to the hub for anybody that's not on the mission, and a couple of security cameras mounted on the building as well, so we can create like a proper Alien-esque type monitoring station, and we do have a radio at the outpost as well, whichever outpost you're working out of, because there's several outposts that the players have now captured in game, and depending what the event is, they'll work from different outposts, but generally they'll have a similar setup, but there's different sort of stuff available at each one. But this sort of Gorman station is something that I'm working on at the moment, and I think it'll add a lot of that. It's all about the immersion, and it's all about bringing more people into it as well. So if people aren't on the mission, or they're playing a more sort of hub-based character, they can still be involved. They can give their benefits to the mission while actually not physically being there. So, and it gives us a lot more footage as well for promoting the game and recording missions and doing mission reports and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a good addition. Okay, any more for any more? That sounded like we're actually going to finish on time for once.
We've heard from pretty much everyone, unless Rob, have you got any questions?
No questions at the moment, but I'm sure I'll have plenty when I'm getting closer and closer to the event.
What character class are you planning to play, Rob? Is it going to be a soldier?
That's what I'm thinking at the moment, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool beans. Well, I say, any questions at all, mate, just shove it on the Facebook page or shove it on the Discord or whatever, mate, and we'll sort it out for you. Absolutely.
What I would say though, unlike other LARPs where people tend to say to new players to avoid playing any of the other classes, like stick to something simple, play that first. Don't do that at HASC. Play whatever you want. If you want to be an engineer and you're like, I don't know enough about, like what do even engineers do? Do I need a spanner or do I need a set of power tools? What am I even going to do? Don't worry about it. Play whatever character class you want to play. It literally is. I started playing an engineer and I haven't regretted it from day one. It was awesome.
There's a lot of I think one thing we have got is we've got a relatively small sort of character base, but the characters that are well developed and have been around for quite a while, because we haven't had a lot of deaths, which is hard to believe when you see how lethal the firefights are. It's hard to believe we haven't had more deaths, and I think that's a testament to how the players have come together as teams to sort of keep each other alive, and we certainly don't go easy on the players at all. The whole idea of the game is that the story is the story, and a failure in itself advances the story. We have had mission failures, but what we haven't had is a lot of player deaths. And it's purely down to the players. That is not us going soft on people. That is down to the players working together really, really well. So yeah, you'll come off an event and you will think, I'm alive and we succeeded because we earned it and we earned it together. It's you're not led down that path. You're not led to the water, and you're not meant to drink it. It's all up to you. Okay, sound. Any more for any more? Also, currency to do players start with. I'll double check, Lewis, because it should be in there, but it's 1,000 credits.
I think it is 1,000.
And don't forget, if you're buying stuff within your class, almost every class gets a discount of some description. So soldiers get 20% off anything in the militaries.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see the XP start. I just can't see the currency start, but I'm pretty sure it's in there somewhere. I read it before.
It's probably in the class bit, maybe.
Yeah, in the class bit, it gives you XP and starting credits. But yeah, we'll have a look at that, Lewis, see if we can make it a bit clearer if it needs it.
All right. Yeah, and another thing, as Alex has just pointed out, there's an in-character. So we've talked from an out-of-character point of view in the rules mechanics, whereas Alex has done one which is kind of a hybrid between the two, based on his experiences as Major Hook.
Okay.
King Hook.
I'm not calling him King.
King Hook, man. King Hook.
Other peasants can call him King. I'm not calling him King.
Right. Any more for any more? Good. Well, I hope that's been useful for people, and we'll catch up with everybody in a couple of weeks. It's been good hearing from a few people I've not spoken to for a while. So yeah, all good, and we'll see you soon.
Yep. See you later.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining in.
Yeah. Cheers all.